We have an exclusive sit-down interview with the new head coach of the Indiana Fever. She was the 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, an NCAA champion, a baller herself, a WNBA champion, and my former broadcasting teammate. What's up, Stephanie White?
What's going on? How are you?
Stephanie White walked into the Indiana Fever locker room with a mission: transform a talented but relatively inexperienced team into a championship contender. Her first move: creating a bulletproof plan to evolve Caitlin Clark's game beyond what defenders can possibly prepare for.
Looking up all of your history and stories, and I'm like, this is a real Indy gal. Like, born in Indiana, you played your college ball in Indiana at Purdue, you played for the Fever in the WNBA along other stops. In coaching, you actually were an assistant coach with the Fever, and now here you are, back as the head coach of the Indiana Fever.
Behind closed doors, White has been crafting a revolutionary system that will unleash Clark, Boston, and Mitchell in ways we've never seen before. The technical details she just revealed show exactly how she plans to shock the WNBA establishment and fast-track Indiana's rise to the top. This isn't a rebuild, it's a reinvention. So what is White's exact game plan? And how is it miles apart from what previous Fever coach Christy Sides had in place? If you're pumped for the Fever season, comment champions down below. Let's go.
You've got an interesting roster that you're heading into as the head coach, and we focus in on the now for the Indiana Fever. You've got a unique locker room. It is undoubtedly super talented, but it's such a mashup of unique personalities, and I'll also say established storylines for each of these players. Like, there aren't some players that haven't figured out what they're about, or the storyline hasn't been created for them in the W. And you've got all of this coming into your locker room. So, season's on the way. What are going to be your first priorities, maybe even exercises in creating common ground and meshing this team?
When Stephanie White returned to Indiana, she didn't just bring a clipboard and whistle. She arrived with architectural blueprints for a basketball empire. A few months into her tenure, we're finally seeing the foundation of what she's building, and it goes far deeper than just collecting talent.
One of the early conversations, for us as a coaching staff, has just been about connection and building relationship, and approaching the players who were in that locker room a year ago in hey, what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that we can help you? You don't know what you don't know, right? And most of those guys were pretty young. Certainly pretty young in terms of playoff experience. And then approaching them in sort of a self-scout way. This is what we would do to you when we played you.
The Fever's 20-win, 20-loss record last season might look respectable on paper, but anyone who watched them against the league's elite teams saw the truth. There's a next level that could further be unlocked. Christy's Sides and the Fever's supporting cast just weren't cutting it. Against championship contenders like New York and Las Vegas, the gap in execution and defensive cohesion was glaring. Having stars like Clark, Mitchell, Boston, and Hull wasn't enough. White knew this required a complete system overhaul.
All of those players are going to help us on the defensive end of the floor, which has been our greatest deficiency. And so I think that having veteran players who understand what it is to be a part of this organization, who are not afraid of all of the things that come with being a part of the Indiana Fever, and who ultimately, at the end of the day, are great teammates, great people, and just want to win.
What's fascinating is White's laser focus on defense as the cornerstone of championship aspirations. While fans marvel at Caitlin Clark's logo threes, Kelsey Mitchell's insane buckets, Aliyah Boston's post moves, and Lexie Hull's accuracy from deep, White recognizes the uncomfortable truth: offensive fireworks alone won't bring championships to Indianapolis. The Fever allowed 82.2 points per game last season, ranking in the bottom half of the league. Championship DNA starts with stops, not just highlight reel buckets.
It was really important who we added in free agency and in the offseason fit who we already had. I mean, look, our big three with Caitlin and Kelsey and Aliyah, you got to have certain kinds of vets that fit around them. That, number one, fill the gaps that we need in our lineups, in our rosters. But number two, have accomplished multiple things that can lead them in a way that they haven't been led before, but also understand where they fit in the scope of what the Indiana Fever is about now and what we're about in the future, and that give us a chance to compete for championships.
The recent roster moves reveal White's strategic vision. DeWanna Bonner wasn't acquired just for her scoring prowess. She brings what White calls that mother hen energy, fiercely competitive while simultaneously nurturing young talent.
DeWanna Bonner, who, again, winner, right, has won at every level, competed and won for a championship in Phoenix, competed for championships with us in Connecticut. Versatility, which is critical for our system and what we want. Ultra competitive, but also like a mother hen, right? So can be that one that can like push you and challenge you, but also like embrace you and hug you and help you understand all the things that go along with the ups and downs and the long season that we have, this sprint marathon of a season.
Natasha Howard isn't just another interior defender. She's someone who understands championship expectations from her time with Seattle.
You think about bringing in Natasha Howard, who was drafted by the Indiana Fever when I was an assistant coach, was traded by the Indiana Fever when I was the head coach, just went out and won multiple championships after that, continued to
winners.
become, absolutely, to continue to become one of the greatest players in the history of our league, played every different kind of role. Is soft-spoken, so when she speaks, you listen because it matters, right? Gives us a little bit different look at that position than we've had before.
These veterans aren't random additions. They're specifically chosen puzzle pieces who complement Clark's playmaking, Boston's interior presence, and Mitchell's scoring punch. White isn't constructing a team of individual stars, but rather an interconnected unit where each player's strengths magnify the others.
Sophie Cunningham. Toughness, right? Winner, ability to play multiple positions, has played with tough competitors. I mean, was essentially mentored by the all-time greatest in Diana Taurasi, right? So now she can be that mentor. She can be that player who comes in and brings us that toughness and that swag, yet keeps our versatility, can knock down shots, which shot making is so important, for us, and take some pressure off of our big three, because all of these other guys can do their own thing, right? But when they fit with what we have, I think it makes us really, really dangerous.
The most intriguing aspect is how White draws from her previous coaching experiences, particularly understanding what it takes to build a contender from the ground up. She's seen firsthand how championship cultures develop, and she's implementing those lessons with surgical precision in Indiana. White understands that championship DNA can't simply be taught in film sessions. It must be experienced, embodied, and transmitted from veterans who've climbed that mountain. That's why Bonner and Howard aren't just playing roles on the court. They're transmitting championship habits in practices, film sessions, and team meals.
You have a generational talent. Sometimes that word is thrown around, but I think it's really fitting here for Caitlin and her talent and her potential at the point guard position.
Those championship habits are crucial, but they're just part of White's master plan. Ever wonder why the most unstoppable players in basketball aren't always the ones with the ball? Stephanie White certainly does, and her revolutionary strategy for Caitlin Clark directly challenges everything we thought we knew about the rookie phenom's game.
From just a straight basketball perspective, making sure that we help her diversify, her finishing ability, diversify in the way that it's not predictable, to be able to be equal in terms of production and facilitation, going right and left.
Clark's historic debut season came with a hidden cost. With the ball constantly in her hands, she faced an onslaught of defensive pressure that grew more sophisticated with each passing game. Double and triple teams became the norm. Traps arrived earlier. By season's end, opponents had essentially built their entire defensive schemes around a single mission: stop number 22 at all costs.
To be able to have different types of finishing looks, whether it's, crossbody finishes, whether it's floaters at the rim, whether it's quick floaters, long floaters, Euros, you can't quite be as fundamentally predictable with as much athleticism, speed, quickness, and as much as the game plan is going to be geared toward her.
This defensive attention created a predictability problem. When Clark couldn't break free, the Fever's offense often stagnated. That's where White's off-ball revolution comes in. Instead of having Clark initiate every possession, White plans to transform her into a movement-based weapon who can strike from anywhere on the court.
The challenge for us as coaches is how do we get her rest when she's on the floor while she's playing, right? Like while she's on the floor. And some of that's going to be playing off ball, utilize her as a screener, getting her into action on the third and fourth side instead of the first and second, where it's easy to game plan against. Now, how we use her to help everybody else be better off the ball. We know how great she is with the ball in her hands. We're not going to take that away, but we've got to be able to diversify a bit in how we use her.
This approach mirrors how the Golden State Warriors deploy Steph Curry. Constant motion that exhausts defenders while creating unexpected scoring opportunities. One moment Clark might be setting a screen, the next she's popping out for a three-pointer from an angle defenses never anticipated.
I mean, we've got like a short-term kind of list and we got a long-term kind of list, but Caitlin, you know, I remember from the very first day when we were working on balance and we were working on footwork and we were looking at all those things, from day one to day two, she had it.
Wow.
Like she's a perfectionist and she wants it and she's going to work on it. So that long list might get shorter every day we're in practice.
The benefits extend beyond tactical advantages. By reducing Clark's time as the primary ball handler, White addresses another critical issue: fatigue. The rookie's late-season performance occasionally suffered as the physical toll mounted. This new approach gives Clark precious moments to catch her breath without removing her impact from the game.
She's got a goal and she wants to have less technical fouls.
That's a good goal.
And you know, she plays with such passion and fire. And of course, sometimes that spills over and sometimes that can, you know, show very visibly, but a lot of times the passion is good. So like, what's your immediate reaction to that?
Did Diana give her any advice?
I think they were bragging on the types of texts they all got.
I'm sure they were.
White's developmental blueprint goes beyond X's and O's. Clark's competitive fire, while essential to her greatness, sometimes burned too hot during her rookie campaign. With 6 technical fouls, tying for second most in the league, Clark's intensity occasionally worked against her. But let's be real, not all of these fouls were deserved.
Having conversations about what it means to show your fire and like, you don't want to take any of that away because that's what makes her special, right? But to channel some of that, you know, in a way that may not hinder our team. You don't want to stifle the things that make her great. But you also have to take into consideration all of the things that go into the ultimate opportunities for success for your team.
White emphasizes her role in helping Clark channel that passion constructively. The coach is encouraging Clark to study Fever legend Tamika Catchings, who mastered the art of controlled intensity. Clark herself has set a concrete goal: cut those technicals down to 2 or fewer next season.
It's the nagging ones, right? Like getting on the official and continuing to nag and nag and nag. Like, that's my job. That's my job. So I think for me, it's helping her navigate the when to do it and when not to. You know, helping her maintain you know, a constructive channel for a lot of that competitive spirit.
Physical development rounds out White's transformation plan. By improving core strength and maintaining a lower center of gravity, Clark will better withstand the physical demands of the league while preserving energy for fourth-quarter heroics.
We already know that Caitlin has put on some strength and muscle. She had that viral picture.
Yeah, you saw that, yeah. I asked her if it was Photoshopped.
She said it was AI. No, but we know she's putting work in in the weight room.
This multi-dimensional approach creates a version of Clark that's nearly impossible to game plan against. When defenders can't predict where she'll attack from or how she'll be used, they're perpetually off balance. The ball-dominant point guard who dazzled college basketball is evolving into something far more dangerous: a complete offensive threat who can demolish defenses with or without the ball.
Another part of the list, too, takes a look at Aliyah Boston, because that 2-player game between Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston, by the end of the season, Steph, it really had a lot of growth and rhythm and flow to it. So what do you envision, you know, that part of the game, especially Aliyah Boston here in year 2 of them together?
The Clark revolution is just the beginning of Stephanie White's basketball reinvention in Indiana. Remember when centers were primarily just rebounding machines and rim protectors? Those days are about to disappear for the Indiana Fever, as White quietly engineers perhaps the most radical positional makeover in the WNBA. And it's happening with Aliyah Boston.
I think Aliyah is an outstanding facilitator as well from that post position. So we're going to use her a little bit more like a hub, right? Like a little bit more like a Jokic in how she gets the ball, and whether that's, in the trail, in a lot of our stuff in flow, or whether that's on the block.
White has made a stunning NBA comparison that reveals everything about Boston's future. That's not just coach speak. It's a blueprint to transform Boston into the Fever's offensive centerpiece in a way that's rarely been seen in women's basketball. Think about what makes Jokic a 3-time NBA MVP. It's not just his scoring, it's how he orchestrates Denver's entire offense from the center position. White sees that same untapped potential in Boston, whose basketball IQ and court vision have been somewhat handcuffed by traditional center expectations. Those 2.7 assists per game Boston averaged? White plans to dramatically increase that number.
I don't want her to have to work as hard, like one-on-one. I don't want her to have to just, pound and body and dribble in a one-on-one situation to get shots. We want to make her life easier. How can we get her touches at the rim where she can just go right into her finishes? How can we get her touches off the block where then we can run off-ball action and she can be a facilitator? Then she can get into other actions that allow her to move after she's gotten rid of it to get some easy buckets.
The traditional center positioning, camping out on the low block waiting for entry passes, creates predictable offensive sets that elite defenses can easily neutralize. But what happens when you suddenly position your 6 feet 5-inch center at the elbow, at the top of the key, or even in transition as a facilitator? Defensive schemes collapse into confusion. That's exactly what White is banking on.
As opposed to just everybody knows a strong side pick and roll is coming. So a little bit more movement, a little bit more usage in her in terms of facilitating, and a little bit more versatility in her game. I mean, challenging her to become a consistent, doesn't have to be high volume, but a consistent 3-point shooter, like looking for those. Being able to use other aspects of her game outside of just pounding with her back to the basket.
Boston's transformation isn't just about where she'll receive the ball, but what happens next. Unlike centers who catch and immediately look to score, Boston will serve as the offensive hub through which the entire Fever attack flows. Cutters, shooters, and secondary playmakers will all operate around her, creating a dynamic offense that's nearly impossible to scout effectively.
You're absolutely right. I love the way that they work together in the two-man game. They got so good at reading one another.
What makes this approach particularly dangerous is the natural chemistry Boston has already established with Clark. Their two-player game showed flashes of brilliance last season, but now White plans to supercharge that connection by creating situations where both stars can feed off each other. Imagine Boston facilitating from the high post while Clark works off screens, then reverse the roles with Clark driving and finding Boston for easy buckets. But White's vision extends beyond just passing. She's challenging Boston to develop a consistent 3-point shot, adding another dimension to her offensive repertoire. This would force opposing centers to defend Boston beyond the arc, creating massive spacing advantages for the entire team. When defenders close out, Boston can then leverage her improved playmaking to attack off the dribble or find open teammates.
Kelsey was our number one priority in free agency, making sure that we're re-signing her, making sure that she understands how important she is to everything that we are going to do. She is the probably the one person on our roster that can just get a bucket, doesn't need any help. Right. I think our ability as a staff to move her around and utilize her strengths and her ability to get downhill. She doesn't need a screen, right? She doesn't need the two-man. The ability to get downhill, the ability to use her in 2 or 3 actions to get her wide open looks, to use her speed in the open floor.
The ripple effects of Boston's transformation will be felt throughout the roster, particularly for scoring dynamo Kelsey Mitchell. Where Mitchell often had to create her own shots in previous seasons, Boston's enhanced playmaking will deliver cleaner looks and reduce the defensive pressure Mitchell faces. This offensive ecosystem helps everyone thrive in their optimal roles.
I thought last year, and you look at her numbers, it was the most efficient year that she's had. Less shots, most efficient, right? All-star performance, she's an all-league performer in my mind, no doubt about it. But I think our system and the way that we can continue to play to her strengths and put her in positions for success, I think it's going to be really good. We're going to free her up to just play. You know, we're gonna use her and Caitlin in a lot of stuff together. We're gonna use them as screeners and a lot of action to then open them up. I mean, we all know, everybody knows, if you're a great scorer, if you can be a great screener, you're gonna get a lot more shots.
This Jokic-inspired redesign represents a fundamental shift in how WNBA teams typically utilize centers. Rather than compartmentalizing players into rigid roles, White is creating a fluid system where positional distinctions blur. Boston won't just be a center. She'll be an offensive fulcrum who can punish defenses in multiple ways while still maintaining her interior defensive presence.
We're going to put her in position to do what she does best and break down the defense. And we're going to have other actions to where it's not like, here you go, Kelsey, you got to make a play, and then we're just watching, right? So we're going to give her multiple options in that action. You know, and then I think she can be a real key for us on the defensive end of the floor. She's been relied upon so heavily offensively in her time in Indiana. And of course, you know, had the most talent that she's ever had around her a year ago. And I think this year will be even more so. So take some pressure off of her to feel the burden of having to make the play. But also, I think she's going to get more wide open looks than she's ever gotten before because of who we have on the floor and because of their ability to space the floor.
White's approach here is revolutionary because it challenges the conventional wisdom about positional roles in women's basketball. By borrowing concepts from the NBA and tailoring them to her personnel, she's creating something that WNBA defenses haven't had to contend with before. The question isn't whether Boston can handle this expanded role. It's whether opponents can figure out how to stop it.
Last year, the Indiana Fever, and quite frankly, Caitlin Clark, saw unprecedented levels of attention, you know, and that meant coverage, fandom, and sometimes it could be hard on the players, even toxic. So I want to just understand, like, I'm sure you had to have given some thought to this and stepping into this unique position on your philosophy of protecting your players and also even players of other teams.
Beyond the X's and O's of basketball innovation, Stephanie White is building something even more crucial for the Fever's success. A psychological fortress designed to shield her players from an unprecedented wave of toxicity. Her three-word philosophy says it all. Don't be a jerk. This isn't just casual advice. It's the cornerstone of White's culture revolution in Indiana.
For our team, our challenge is going to be, what do we allow inside the building, right? What do we allow inside the locker room? Like, we've got to be very protective of our space. We got to be very protective of our team. If you don't have the ability to shut it down, then we have to have and utilize the resource to be able to keep it on the outside, right? We cannot allow that to infiltrate our building.
The spotlight on Caitlin Clark and the Fever has brought millions of new eyeballs to women's basketball. But with that attention came a tsunami of criticism and personal attacks. This is precisely why White has made protecting her team's space a top priority. She's creating what amounts to a sanctuary within the locker room where players can focus solely on basketball without the noise of social media seeping in. White draws a clear line between legitimate basketball criticism and personal attacks targeting things outside of basketball. Clark herself has addressed the issue, calling the hate sad and unfortunate, while pointing out that those engaging in such behavior aren't true fans but trolls whose actions do a real disservice to the WNBA. White's response has been to add veteran leaders who understand how to navigate these treacherous waters.
Sydney Colson, a backup point guard, was really important for us. Again, a winner at every level. Different kinds and vibes and different kind of leadership. Like, not afraid to speak her mind. Like, has been through the rigor and the battles. Has played, has not played. Has been in rotation, has not been in rotation. Was called upon when Chelsea Gray goes down with injury in the finals, and ultimately helps them win the series.
The addition of Sydney Colson wasn't just about adding depth. It was a strategic move to bring in a steadying influence who can help maintain positive chemistry when the pressure mounts. Colson represents the kind of veteran leadership that helps younger players separate constructive criticism from toxic noise.
Is one of those players who can nip things in the bud in the locker room without it having to get to us as coaches. Builds our depth on the perimeter, allows us a little bit more versatility with Caitlin and Kelsey and what we do with them. Really important to get somebody of her caliber, you know, certainly for us.
White's protective approach extends to how players interact on the court as well. Individual statistics take a backseat to team success, with selfless play and collective responsibility forming the bedrock of the Fever's identity. This holistic approach treats mental health as equally important as physical development, creating an environment where players can thrive regardless of external pressures.
You can dislike an opponent, you can dislike whatever it is. Be a fan, but don't be a bad human being, right? Mm-hmm. Like be a fan, but don't be a jerk. Like, it's not that hard to not be a jerk.
As we look at the blueprint Stephanie White has constructed, it's clear she's light years ahead of what the Fever's previous coach was building. What really stands out is her commitment to sustainability over immediate gratification. She's explicitly stated that this Fever rebuild isn't about quick wins. It's about creating a foundation that supports championship contention for years to come. When the core pieces of this team fully integrate into White's system, we're looking at something revolutionary. The Indiana Fever won't just be competitive. They'll be setting the standard for how WNBA franchises develop their talent and construct their identities for the next generation of women's basketball. If you're pumped for the Fever season, comment champions down below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.